Revolution Radio proudly presents, live from the heart of the Blue Ridge, Roanoke, Virginia. It's the Just Bernard Show with host Bernard Alvarez. Join Bernard as he shares topics that reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience, including world liberty, the esoteric, suppressed technologies, spiritual ascension, and human consciousness. Humanity has awakened, and our time has come to realize our full potential. And now, live from the Star City, your host, Bernard Alvarez.
But I think the most important thing I want to say, and I feel it's really important for people to understand the difference between regular activism and sacred activism is where it's coming from. I like to say sacred activism comes from the heart, whereas regular activism comes from the mind. One is proactive and one is reactive. Most of the activism we're seeing right now, especially surrounding Trump and whatnot, is very reactive. It's very angry. It's very divisive. And while I may not be happy with the status quo right now, we're not going to change anything by getting angry. We cannot raise our consciousness if we're lowering ourselves into such a negative, down to that level, for lack of a better term. So with that in mind, I thought it was a great time for me to start working on another project. I started a new project called sacredactivist.org, and you can always go to sacredactivist.org and sign up to be a member. I was missing that camaraderie of light workers and change makers and way showers that we used to have with the Global Illumination Council. So I created a public, it's kind of like a forum, but it's a little bit more than that. It's very similar to what the GIC used to be. You can post videos, pictures, articles, links, etc., etc. You can create an account. You can follow other members to see what they're posting. Again, very similar to what the GIC used to be. And it's called sacredactivist.org. And the basis of that, the foundation of sacredactivist.org, and not only the sacredactivist.org, but for me as a sacred activist, was the pledge that I wrote back in 2006 when we were starting the Global Illumination Council. We wanted all the members to kind of be on the same page, so I created a pledge for the members of Global Illumination Council, and now I'm bringing it forward here into 2017 already. I can't believe it. That was 11 years ago that I wrote that. So I want to share the pledge with you first to get the ball rolling and on today's talk, because I feel that sacred activism is more about us as individuals and how we perceive the world, how we interact with the world, and how we interact with one another. Again, sacred activism is not necessarily reactive, it's more proactive. It's literally, being the change you want to see in the world. And in order for us to do that, I thought that this type of a pledge or something would be very helpful, so I'm going to share this with you now. It says, we have pledged to respect and defend any individual's human, spiritual, employment, medical, housing, business, voting, educational, legal, economic, food, and sustenance rights, including the right to a healthy and thriving planet, the well-being of all wild and domesticated animals, plants, and insects, our natural resources, and the general well-being of all aspects of the universe. We will act in kindness to all humans and to all life itself. We will not acknowledge, give credence to, endorse, participate, or do commerce with those who perpetuate through action, word, or deed an obvious agenda contrary to what is stated above, including obvious sentiments of racism, greed, betrayal, injustice, or intolerance towards another's individual rights. We acknowledge we are the future and take full responsibility for laying out the foundation for empowered future generations. And again, you can find that on sacredactivist.org. The key principle here for me is that we take responsibility. We take responsibility for our actions. We take responsibility to who we give our money to. We take responsibility for creating the kind of world that we want to live in, that we want to see for our children, for our grandchildren, for our great-grandchildren. And in order to do that, we've got to become the example. We are the way showers. We are the change makers. We are the saviors. No one's going to come and save us. No one's, I posted a video a couple of weeks ago about are the ETs coming to save us. It's up to us. It's up to us. And in order to do that, we must take responsibility for our behavior, for the way we live, for how we interact with one another. And actually, for me, that is the key to begin the changing the planet in order to have a world of justice, love, and compassion is the way we interact with each other. Unfortunately, and we see this, God, we saw this when YouTube first started, and it's still a little bit like that, but it's not as bad, where everyone just felt like it was okay to be a jerk to one another online. We see it all the time on Facebook, where people just feel so comfortable to be horrible to each other. And if we can't get along with our own species, how are we going to heal all life as well as the planet itself? So it really comes down to taking responsibility for how we interact with each other face to face or online, community to community, state to state, political party to political party, country to country, and hopefully one day planet to planet. So we must learn to cultivate certain traits within ourselves. We must learn to cultivate and take responsibility for our own spiritual maturity. And to me, that is what sacred activism is all about. It is an active participation in the evolvement of your perception of the world, of evolving your heart, and also evolving to create change in the world around you. In order for us to change the world around us, it is important for us to be able to create change within our own selves and to continue to evolve. Hi Lee, good to see you. Thanks for joining us here on YouTube. And yes, thank you. And I agree, people aren't being so reactive anymore, and that's a very good sign that we are beginning to evolve. Now, like I said, I was researching a little bit with researching online about sacred activism. And again, the only other name that really popped up was Andrew Harvey. So I'm going to reference some of his work today. I found this on BeliefNet, and it's a pretty good website, actually. These are some ways that you can cultivate that sacred activist mentality, perception, and action, reaction, whatever we want to call it. So some of the ways that we can do this is starting at the beginning. Starting at the very beginning, the word sacred activist. What is sacred to you? For me, when I first started doing this work back when I was a teenager, geez, I don't even want to mention how many years ago, back in the 80s, excuse me, I was very, very much about ecology. I ended up getting involved with Greenpeace and whatnot, but for me, as a, well, for lack of a better term, I consider myself an earth spirit, pagan, whatever word works for you. But for me, it was the planet. It was nature. I'll never forget growing up in the 70s, that commercial, and I know they show it every once in a while, of it showed like a river or something with all this pollution on the side and plastic bottles and bags everywhere. And you saw this Native American walk up to the edge of the riverbank, and you just see this one tear. And that really affected me as a child, growing up and seeing that commercial all the time. So when I saw it, growing up in Miami, I saw a lot of pollution. And so when I saw it, it really affected me, and it made me realize how sacred the planet was to me. So figuring out what is sacred to you is right now for me, consciousness is probably the most sacred thing, and that's why I do most of my work surrounding consciousness and the evolution of our human consciousness. The way that we think is very sacred to me. That's why I meditate. That's why I believe in doing the work to develop and expand our awareness and our consciousness. So, what's sacred to you? Um, for a little while there, me, it was clean air. I didn't want to see all those chemtrails polluting the atmosphere. Um, what else? Geez, there's just, oh, human rights, of course. You know, that is very sacred to me, that people are treated with respect and with dignity, no matter your nationality, no matter your gender identity or sexual identity or color of your skin or your religion. You know, one of the things that that really, really bother me right now is how not only, I mean, it's always been going on, the politicking and the nitpicking and whatnot, but to see, I hate to use labels, but you know, the anti-Trump people versus the Trump people, or the left and the right, or whatnot. But people have gotten very mean-spirited, and you know, I don't like Trump as a president. I probably don't like him as a person, but he's a human being, and every human being deserves respect and dignity. You know, I don't have to agree with him, but I do have to acknowledge that he is a human being, and every human being deserves respect and dignity. Now, if he does something illegal, of course you put him in jail. But this goes with everybody, whether it's a Republican you don't like, or a liberal you don't like, or a Green member you don't like, or a socialist you don't like. They're human beings. They have families. They have a heart. They have feelings. Well, most of them do. We must acknowledge this. We must acknowledge that every individual has a right to exist. And if we don't like what they're doing, usually it's to teach us something about ourselves, if we are going to be honest about it. If we're going to be honest about not liking the way that person wears their hair, or the way they decorate their home, or the way that they talk to their children or whatnot, it's usually a reflection of something that's going on inside of us. And that includes the politicians. That includes the celebrities. That includes those of us that we're constantly making fun of, pointing fingers at, and acting really childish toward. What I'm seeing now reminds me of high school when people were bullying. I mean, we're always talking about anti-bullying, but yet we're bullying the politicians. Don't get me wrong, they bully us, but that's the whole thing about sacred activism. Sacred activism shows us, it teaches us that two wrongs don't make a right. If you're being treated poorly, whether it be by your government, by your president, by the police or whatnot, it's not to stoop to their level. We must elevate ourselves. We must be the example. And yes, of course, work toward legislation to stop this type of behavior from public servants, of course. But don't react in anger, and don't treat them like they're less than human, because they are still human beings. So for me, these are the things that are sacred to me. Humanity is sacred to me. The earth is sacred to me. The air, the water. So we have to look at these things and find out what is sacred to us. So that would be the first step, I'll say. Pardon me. My unfluoridated water. Actually, I'm having it in a Deer Park bottle, but I have a filter. That's the other thing. Getting fluoride out of water is another one. Anyway, so as we are on the road to sacred activism, let's ask ourselves, what can we do to cultivate this type of connection with, well, with our higher self? And one of the most important things that we can do as a sacred activist is to cultivate, and I don't want to sound cliche, but it's very true, an attitude of gratitude. When we are in a place of gratitude, when we are acknowledging the good in our life, when we can wake up in the morning and say, I am grateful for my health, I'm grateful I have a roof over my head, etc., etc., we are not we begin to develop a habit when we're not looking for the worst in everything. It's about cultivating a positive attitude. Gratitude begets more gratitude. Gratitude creates and cultivates a mentality of a vibrational awareness that allows goodness to come into our life. If we are not grateful for the smallest things, we're constantly going to be looking for more and more and more. So what I suggest, and actually what this gentleman, Andrew Harvey, suggests, is to write down just one special thing every day. And I mean, I don't do this necessarily, but I do use gratitude within my meditation. But to write down one thing every day that you're grateful for. At least acknowledge one thing you're grateful for. As someone who had health issues about a year and a half ago, I'm grateful not to be in pain anymore. I'm grateful that I look pretty good for my age. I'm grateful that I have a YouTube channel. I'm grateful that I have friends out there like you watching this and listening to this. I'm grateful for my cat who loves me and adores me. We have a lot to be grateful for. Again, the reason why we want to cultivate this attitude of gratitude is so we can learn to stop looking for problems, to stop looking for what is broken and empowering that which is already working, cultivating and feeding that goodness energy instead of, again, reacting and looking for something being wrong. And actually, don't get me wrong, I'm the king of worry. Uh, but worrying is praying for something bad to happen. So it's about cultivating that. Through gratitude, we can get rid of that worry, that fear, that looking for something to go wrong. Oh boy, this is going by very quickly. We've only got a few more minutes before the commercial break. But the other thing, one of the other things that we want to consider when we are developing our sacred activism, when we are developing our sacred activist mentality and attitude, is to be able, again, to cultivate that forgiveness, cultivating forgiveness. In the Book of One, which is my book, Returning to Source Wisdom, which I released back in 2012, 2013, one of the passages says, "Forgive the world for not seeing the truth, and you forgive yourself for the anger that you hold." And that's pretty much where it lies. Let us learn that we have the ability to forgive those around us. And we can take it a step further. We can, according to, again, I'm looking down at the notes here, think of someone who has hurt or betrayed you and make a commitment to work on forgiving them. That's a big gesture. That's a really big gesture, but can we do it? Yes, of course we can. We all have the ability to forgive someone. You don't need to forget. You can learn the lessons of what happened. But when we're holding on, what is that? That meme that goes around? Holding on to anger is like holding a hot coal, and you're not hurting the other person. You're only hurting yourself. So if we can cultivate that forgiveness within ourselves, we do let go of that lot of that negativity. And through that, we learn to forgive ourselves and be able, again, to enhance the positive energy and the positive strengths that are already within us. So can you do that? Will you do that? Will you make a commitment today to think about someone who has hurt you or betrayed you and give them, or give yourself the opportunity to let go of the anger, let go of the betrayal, and forgive them? And if we can, let's continue to do that. Let's go through our life. Let's do an inventory of all people that have betrayed us or hurt us, and let us learn to forgive them. Just because, and this is something that I think people don't seem to understand. You can forgive someone. It doesn't mean they need to be in your life. You can love someone. It doesn't mean they need to be in your life. I always joke around saying, I love my human family, but I'm not too crazy about people. The reality of it is that we can have the attitude of love and forgiveness, but it's not about letting someone who has hurt you in the past back into your life. It's about letting go of their power over you. If you can cut that energetic cord, think about that. Think about the energy, the frustration, the minutes, the hours, and the energy that you've put toward holding on to the anger of someone who hurt you. You're literally giving them power to what do they say? They're renting space in your head. It's a lot. It's a waste of energy, and we need to really consider what are we thinking of, what are we feeling. Anyway, we're going to be coming up on a commercial in just a moment, so I really don't want to go much further. But I will say, everybody, please, head over to bernardalvarez.com. I'm actually redoing the website. There's some parts that aren't quite polished up yet, so please forgive. There are some places that are under construction. As a matter of fact, one of them is Secret Temple TV, which is going to be completely separate from my YouTube channel. It's strictly going to be classes that you can download. I'm going to keep them very inexpensive, like $2.99 or something. But there will be classes available very soon. You can find actually all my archives there, all my blogs, etc., etc. You can actually book an appointment with me if you want. Anyway, we'll be right back after this break.
And now, back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Welcome back to the Just Bernard Show. We are talking about sacred activism today. By the way, we are the #1 listener-supported radio station in the world. We are Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And today we are simulcasting live on YouTube on the Just Bernard channel. Anyway, like I said, we are talking about sacred activism today. Before the break, we were talking... Well, actually, let me cover just a little bit. We talked a bit about the pledge to be a sacred activist. What does that entail? As well as ways to cultivate that sacred activism within us, such as being grateful, knowing what is sacred to us, being proactive versus reactive. And again, it's about cultivating a new attitude, a new perception. And to help us with that, this gentleman, again, I'm referring to Andrew Harvey's work, talks about reading sacred words, and I do this constantly. When we read sacred words, we are, well, let's put it this way. I talk quite a bit about being vigilant as to what you expose your senses to. Being aware of what your ears, your eyes, your mouth, your skin, what you're feeling, tasting, reading, seeing, whether it be television, whether it be radio. And in order to kind of, balance that out, I mean, don't get me wrong, I've got Hulu and I love watching Orange is the New Black or whatnot, but in order to balance out all of that stuff that is going into our minds, I feel it is important to read sacred words. I literally pick up my book, which I don't remember everything about it all the time, so I have to open it up and I'll just read a passage, or read a passage from Eckhart Tolle, or Rumi, or something, the Bhagavad Gita, the Tao Te Ching, whatever works for you. Reading those words to help us be inspired as the authors who wrote those books were inspired is going to help our sacred activism. It's going to ground us in compassion. It's going to ground us to come from our heart versus our reactive mind. It's important for us to feed our brain healthy, nice things, as well as keeping it in balance with all the other stuff that's going on. We live in a very busy world, and what I mean by that is technology, whether it be the internet, whether it be television, whether it be radio, there's always something being fed into our subconscious. So it is important for us to make the effort to feed and cultivate our minds in a positive way. And I do believe that using those sacred words, again, no matter who it is, whatever works for you, whatever you find inspiring, read some sacred words every day. Read something that's a little bit inspirational, or for that matter, watch one of my videos if you find them inspirational. Something to feed your mind, to cultivate some kind of sacred attitude and mystical spiritual awareness within you. It will be very, very helpful in the long run. I'm just scrolling down to check the chat. Hi everybody. Thanks for hanging out here. Um, One of the other things which is extremely important to me, which is actually my basis and my foundation for all of the work that I do, is to align with love. And I don't mean, fluffy bunny, nothing is ever wrong, I'm never unhappy love, but aligning with universal energy. Call it chi, call it prana, whatever it is, your higher self. And actually, that is the terminology that I like to use, is to align with my higher self, align with my intuition. Allow yourself to be an instrument for the divine within you. Allow yourself to be an instrument of love for the planet. When we can cultivate that relationship with our higher self, when we can align with that universal presence, the universal mind, and allow ourselves to be the vessel, the instrument of love in the world, that's what sacred activism is all about. It's coming from that place of universal consciousness. It's coming from that place of from source, if that's what you want to call it. And allowing ourselves to be the instrument is what is going to motivate you to take action in the world that is positive, to take action in the world that is going to help those that are lesser than where you might be, or that are suffering, or to go to a rally to promote human rights, or help support some type of legislation to create more equality in the world. But aligning with that higher self is what's going to help us. Um, be an instrument for healing, be an instrument for peace, and be an instrument for compassion and justice. If we can do these things, if we can be the example, we make the difference. Lead by example. And to lead by example, you have to feel that inspiration. You have to feel that alignment with love. Make it genuine. Be authentic. Yes. Thank you. Agape love. I think that's Gary. Hi, Gary. As we develop our sacred activism, as we move down the path, and or move up the path, however you want to look at it, one of the things that is inevitable is the act of some type of spiritual practice. And I don't mean religion. I don't mean becoming a Buddhist monk and moving to the woods and, shedding all your worldly goods or whatnot. I don't mean it in an extreme sense. A spiritual practice to me is as simple as meditating for 5 minutes a day. It's as simple as taking a walk in the woods and connecting with nature. It could be anything from chanting to yoga to prayer to meditation. I know many people that use art as their spiritual practice. There's no reason why drawing can't be your spiritual practice, but cultivate it. Commit yourself to 5 minutes a day of some form of spiritual practice, even if it's reading sacred words. But that spiritual practice becomes a part of who we are, and it continues to nurture and nourish our souls so that we're that filled cup. We're filled with that love. We're filled with that energy in order to share that with the world. If we are not nurturing our spirit, if we're not nourishing our spirit, we have nothing to offer others. So in order for us to be a profound sacred activist, it's important for us to have some type of spiritual practice. I highly recommend meditation. I don't feel that meditation is hard. Yes, I've been doing it for 30 years, but as I've gotten older, it's become simpler and simpler because of the fact that meditation for me at this point in my life is merely just watching my thoughts. And if I can't control my thoughts, that's fine. Let that monkey mind go, but I'm just watching them. I'm observing my thoughts, giving yourself a moment to sense what's going through your mind. Give yourself a moment even to just Take a few deep breaths. Count your breath. Count to 5. Just take that moment. It's not that hard. It's really not that hard to meditate. Meditation is just grounding, calming down, and watching your thoughts, watching your breath. It doesn't have to be that hard. Anyway, I've gone on too much about that. Anyway, the next thing that is suggested in order to cultivate this profound sacred activist lifestyle, or to be able to create change, and this next one is all about creating change. Make a small gesture. We all have friends who are in grief. We have friends who might be sick. We might have friends that are looking for a job. Or we have friends that are in real financial difficulty. Let's commit. Commit right now to calling them. Call them. Ask them what you can do to help. Reach out. Make a small gesture. One of the things, sadly, that is missing from the world today is that we don't want to be, how shall we say, people don't like to be inconvenienced. And we see this with how the media, how politicians treat the poor. We see this with how culturally and socially we treat those that are going through a difficult time. When people are going through a difficult time, that's not the time to turn your back on them. And we all, I'm sure if you think about it right now, we all have a friend or a neighbor or someone who's going through a difficult time and possibly just being ignored. Reach out to them. Just call them. Is there anything I can do? I know that you just lost your job. Would you like me to bring over dinner? I know that your wife just passed away. Is there anything I can do to ease your burden? I know that you're going through a tough time. Do you need someone to talk to? Reach out. Make a small gesture. Let's reconnect. Let's reconnect with our friends, with our family. Let's begin to support one another. And it just takes a phone call. It's not that hard. This next one, again, this is from this gentleman, what's his name? I'm already forgetting. Andrew Harvey. These are suggestions that he has. And the next one is to take a baby step to stop world hunger. I know that's very cliche. It is very cliche. But the reality of it is that, what is it, like 1/3 of the world is starving, and people are like dropping, thousands are dying every day from starvation. This is our planet. This is the 21st century, and there are still people that don't have food. It's ridiculous. And of course, the corporations are trying to say that they're helping the problem by creating all these genetically modified organisms. I don't know if that's going to help in the long run, and quite honestly, I don't want Frankenfish inside of me. But the reality of it is that people are starving, and people are dying. So one of the suggestions is to make a commitment to skip a meal in the next day, like starting today, from today to tomorrow, skip one meal. And whatever money that you are going to spend on that meal, or whatever, how much that meal is going to cost you, make a small check or money order or something to help relieve the hunger of the world. It's suggested to send it to the Buddhist Global Relief. Apparently, they're working to fight hunger. But even $5 or $10 is going to make a big difference to somebody in sub-Saharan Africa. $5 or $10 will buy them a bag of 10 pounds of rice. Skip one meal and send that amount off to the Buddhist Global Relief Fund. Pretty simple stuff. We just don't think about it. We just don't think about it. And it's about learning to remember and having compassion and being aware of the world around us, as well as what's going on within inside of us. Um, another suggestion, which I feel is very important, is to reach out into your community. We just talked about reaching out to a friend, but reach out into your community. What is going on in your community? Many people have this idea that, oh, the government's going to save us, or, the aliens are going to save us. The most important thing we need to do is take care of our own backyard. And if everybody took care of their own backyard, what a beautiful world it would be. What is happening in your community? What needs help? Is there a particular aspect or a particular neighborhood that needs more support? Does does Do you have a charity nearby that you can volunteer at? Um, I believe in volunteering. For me personally, this is what I do, is volunteering at a local human services organization. Over the years, I've been working with the Roanoke Diversity Center, and recently was made the chairman of the Diversity Center, and I spend a lot of time there, and I do everything I can to help them. It's a cause I feel is very important. But you don't even have to volunteer at an organization. You can literally just pick a friend or a family and just help them directly. Go to maybe a lower income neighborhood. Maybe you know someone who is living in a lower income neighborhood, and decide that you're going to help them, that you're going to, even if it's to give them a ride to the doctor, or give them a ride to the shop, to buy groceries. You can help. You can help. Reach out into your community. We clean up our backyard. If everyone's got a clean backyard, we got a great world, right? The next thing, which I feel also is very important, because quite honestly, I do make my living like this, is to choose a cause. Choose a cause. Make a commitment today. Even if you're having financial difficulties, offer $2 or $5 a month to an organization, a cause, a YouTube creator. I do the sci-fi show, the sci show. I love the sci show. I love how they make science, available to everybody. So I give them $2 a month. It's not much. I don't have much to give, but I'm not going to die from $2 a month. So I send them $2 a month. There's other creators here on YouTube that I plan on supporting probably after this broadcast. But make a commitment, $2 to $5 a month, a cup of coffee, make a commitment to support a cause. It's not that hard. It's not that hard. It's just going through the motions. And I know we all think about it all the time. We just forget. And it does make a difference. It really does make a difference. That's the new thing now. That's the new word we're using, is micro donations. Because the reality of it is that we're all having difficulty on the planet with all the austerity and whatnot, and the hoarding of money by the rich, the 1%. Nobody can offer $100 or $200 anymore. Make a micro donation, $2, $5. Support a cause you believe in. Support a cause that inspires you, and you'll see, little by little, creates a ripple effect, and it helps change the world. I feel that we forget, and I'm hoping this isn't the last thing. Oh, okay, I've got a few more minutes. There is hope. We have to remember that there is hope. Many times, those of us who are involved in activism, we begin to lose faith, and that's okay. But don't lose hope. I don't feel that things are getting worse. I feel personally that we're seeing the worst because we're noticing how wrong things have been. All these things that we're seeing now, like, oh, the president, or war, or etc., etc., we're seeing it more now, first of all, because of the internet and because of 24-hour news, and well, even that's wrong now. But we're seeing more and more of what's wrong, because don't forget, this stuff has been going on for decades, or thousands of years for that matter. We're seeing it now more because now we know it's wrong. Now we know that this is something that needs to be changed. Contrast teaches us and kind of motivates us and pushes us into the direction that is going to be more beneficial. So When we're seeing war, we don't like seeing war. We work toward peace. When we see corruption in government, we work to removing corruption in government. When we see poverty, we begin to move toward removing poverty. So seeing all this is not about losing hope, it's about gaining hope. It's about being inspired to create change. So there is hope. There is always something that we can do, whether it is to help one individual, to help an entire community, or to help the planet. There is always something that we can do, and there is hope. Don't ever lose hope. Don't lose faith in humanity. Don't. If you lose faith in humanity, where are we going to go? What are you going to do? We lose faith in ourselves. Let's extend compassion everywhere. And in order to do that, I believe it's about practicing compassion. Look at the world. Begin to cultivate a perception of the world as one human family. We are all related, if you think about it. We are all connected one way or another. We are one human family. You don't have to love everybody. Do you like everyone in your family? Of course not. But you still love them. Let's start to begin to develop that idea that we are one human family and begin to extend that compassion to everyone we meet. Especially those that are less fortunate. Especially those that are less fortunate. Especially countries that are suffering. Especially those who are being persecuted, especially those that are suffering from injustice. Let us share our compassion. It is not a burden. It's not an inconvenience. We are one human family. So, lastly, we've only got a couple more minutes. Lastly, I want to say let us begin to start supporting that which we want. Sacred activism is not anti-Trump, it's not anti-war, it's not anti-poverty, it's pro-peace, it's pro-compassion, pro-love. Support things you are for rather than that which you're against. If we are reacting, and again, I'm bringing it full circle here, when we are reacting from anger, we're changing nothing. To go and scream and yell obscenities at the White House or at a corporation or whatnot, all we're doing is sending out more negative energy. All we're doing is raising the negative vibration. We want to raise the positive vibration. And please, don't get me wrong. We are human beings. We can be outraged. We can be angry. Get angry. Get outraged. But step back. Wait a moment and figure out what you can do to change it for the better. Just reacting, just being angry, just protesting, isn't going to change anything. Think about what you can do to make the situation better. Again, we're allowed to be angry. We're allowed to react. We're only human. But if we're going to empower humanity, we must be able to be proactive. We must be able to create change from our heart space versus the anger that is within us. And thank you for that, Gary. He says, when you push against something, you're feeding energy into it and thus making it bigger. I agree. And I don't want to sound cliche. I'm seeing this strand of hair. It's driving me nuts. I don't want to sound cliche, but that which you resist persists. That's why I don't like this whole Trump resist thing. I'm like, is this like brainwashing? Keep resisting. You're growing. You're growing that negative energy. So be weary of anything that tells you against or resist or no. Change. 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 Anyway, we're about out of time, everybody. That went by quicker than I thought. So I want to thank you all for joining me today. I will have the archive up of this. I'll be sharing it around. I might have to check this. I don't know if I can keep this up on YouTube for long. But anyway, don't forget to join me next week. Patricia Ayan from the Kemet School of Ancient Mysticism. I'll be here live on YouTube and on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I love you, everybody. Have a great weekend and happy 4th of July to those of you celebrating.